Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Veg Grower Podcast. My name's Richard and I want to encourage and inspire you to grow more of your own food in whatever space you have available. And I do this by sharing exactly what's been going on in my own allotment, my own kitchen garden here in Littlehampton in the south coast of the United Kingdom. I've been growing my own food for over 30 years, but I still learn something new every single day. Now, coming up this week, I have moved further along with my beekeeping journey, and you're going to hear all about that later on. Out in the kitchen garden, I have been going through my pots. We start this week off down on the allotment. Well, we start this week off down on the allotment, and middle of May is usually when I feel it is safe to plant out many of our tender plants. But you may recall over the last recent weeks I have been saying that I've planted mine out a little bit early. And that's because I thought we were going to be safe. I didn't think we were going to get any bad weather. Well, guess what's happened this week? We have had some frosts, which is pretty unusual, I've got to say. It came out of the blue, actually. I mean, I say frosts. I didn't personally experience frost. It was a colleague at work that said when he came out, he had a frost on his windscreen one morning. But temperatures have certainly dipped overnight, and although we have also had some rain, with the rain we've also had hail, and that has meant that the temperatures just here on the allotment particularly have been pretty cold. Now luckily my kitchen garden at home hasn't been too badly affected, but here in the allotment I can tell you now things have been affected. One of the big clues was as I was driving in, I always like to have a nose around what other people were doing on their allotments. And I noticed quite a few of the potatoes on other people's allotments were black. So when I got here, the first thing I did was check my potatoes. And sure enough, the leaves on those had gone black and dead. Now, I don't think this is anything to really worry about. Potatoes are generally pretty hardy. I think they will bounce back. But it's not unusual for potatoes to get hit by a frost. I've had it before. They've been absolutely fine. It just makes the harvests a little bit later. However, some of the other plants have not been so lucky. Cucumbers that I planted out last week, they have been killed off, which is rather annoying because I was looking forward to seeing how they grow. And some of my other tender plants, tomatoes, etc., have also been affected as well. Now this is a lesson to be learned because I was a little bit too brave. I did think I was pushing the limits by getting these plants in early. Normally it wouldn't be about till this weekend when these things go out. So, I'm paying the price for being too bold. Next year we won't plant them out too early. We will wait until the middle of May. Now luckily back at home I still have plenty of tomatoes and other plants that can go in their place. It's not the end of the world. It's a little annoying, but it's not the end of the world. It just means I have to replant them. Or something like cucumbers, there's still plenty of time to sow those. So it's not the end of the world. It's just a little annoying. And also, as I said, it's lesson learned. We will never plant out so early again. We're going to stick with the tried and tested time of middle of May. Means it's a bit of a rush, but we can cope with that. Instead, what I should be concentrating on, and that's what I've been doing this week, because I'm not planting any plants out this week, I have been concentrating just solely on removing weeds. Now this is one of those tasks that I seem to be doing all the time at the moment. It's something that does take up a lot of time, but I do think at this time of year it is so important to keep on top of the weeds. The reason I say that is weeds at the moment are going to be growing like mad. They're going to keep coming back and back and back. But if we keep on top of them at this time of year, it makes it easier as we go on further into the year. So I have been constantly removing weeds. Every time I visit, I remove more and more weeds. And although I won't say my allotment is completely weed-free, I would say we have certainly on top of it. There's just a few problem areas that I'm going to pay attention to over the coming weeks, which will just tidy up the allotment quite a lot. Now, in terms of harvest, I've also harvested some more rhubarb and asparagus. But I've noticed that my asparagus this year just isn't as good as it normally is. And I was starting to think that this is going to be the last harvest. And what I'm going to do instead is just feed it with some good chicken manure pellets. Now, I did think this was just a bit odd, but luckily I've read on a few other groups and other people talking to other people that everybody, or quite a few people rather, are reporting that asparagus is a bit thin this year, shall we say. So there's obviously something going on with the weather that has caused the asparagus to not grow at its best. I'm not overly worried. Like I said, asparagus is another one that is very hardy and will come back. Added to that, one of the other things I'm keeping my eye on is the garlic. Now, my garlic has, of course, been mulched with straw. And it seems to be growing really, really well. But one of the things I'm always keeping my eye out is leek rust. These little red dots that show up on the garlic, and it can basically reduce the amount of growth that we get. Now, I've noticed since using this straw mulch, my leek rust is significantly less than usual, and that's certainly the case at the moment. But we are starting to see some signs of leek rust. So whenever I see leek rust, all I've got to do now is remove the leaves that are affected and burn those. Now, this isn't too bad. There are just a few little splodges, and we want to get in front of it right now, because if we can get on top of it now, it'll mean that the plant has more chance to continue growing. There's only a few weeks left for garlic to grow, if you think about it. We nearly are at the halfway point of the year. And when that happens, garlic does stop growing. But we've still got probably a month to go. We want to get the most out of it in that time. So removing any leek rust is a priority. But luckily, I do think the mulch is helping reduce the amount of leek rust that we are getting this year. And I'm quite pleased for that. So there we go, that's what's been going on here down on the allotment this week. I'm going to head on home and I'll meet you back in the kitchen garden. But in the meantime, let's find out what's been going on in the Supporters Club this week. Well, it's the point of the podcast where I ask you to do me a favour, and that is just simply rate and review this podcast on your podcast provider. It only takes you a few seconds, but it really means the world to us, and it helps us get found by more people who also might be looking for a bit of inspiration on how to grow their own food. Now, added to that, if you are also enjoying this podcast and you want to help support the work that we do, then please consider becoming a member of the Veg Grower Podcast Supporters Club. For just £5 a month, you get access to extra behind-the-scenes podcasts. They give you a bit more of an idea of what's going on here at the Veg Grower Podcast HQ. In addition to that, once a month you will also receive through the letterbox our monthly seed pack. And that seed pack contains a collection of seeds that I have carefully chosen to be sown in that very month. And along with the seeds, you also get a copy of our mini newspaper. Now, our mini newspaper gives you a few instructions on how to sow the seeds I've just mentioned, but it also gives you a list of tasks that you could do, a list of seeds that you could sow, as well as the opportunity to make your own notes. It's a bit of a tool that I have created in our mini newspaper. Now, if that sounds like something you would be interested in, then please head to the veggrowerpodcast.co.uk. But to give you an idea of what we have been sowing this week, we've been sowing some cucumber and runner beans. Both of these are delicious staples in any veg garden. Now, like I said, if that is something you would be interested in signing up, then please head to the veggrowerpodcast.co.uk. Well, I'm sat out in my kitchen garden now, and it's just starting to rain once again. Now, I've got to admit, getting this little bit of rain, although it is showers, is rather welcome. It is filling up our water butts once again rather nicely. But at the same time, it's very easy to get complacent and think that this rain is giving us plenty of water for our plants. It isn't. It isn't at all. We still need to keep watering our plants because otherwise the rain just doesn't soak into the ground enough. I find one way to tell how much rain we've had is just simply stick my finger in the soil and see if it feels dry below the surface. If it is, we have to add a bit more water. Now this week I have been focusing a lot on my potted plants. Now I do have quite a few plants in pots, or I did have quite a few plants in pots, I should say. I got a bit of a love-hate relationship with potted plants. I do think they need more work than just growing it in the soil. They're more reliant on us as gardeners to look after them. I also, over the years, I've collected quite a few garden pots. Some terracotta, some plastic, and some that just look dated and old. So what I've been doing lately, every month when I get paid, I go to a particular garden centre, I buy a particular type of garden pot. Now the reason for this, these are quite large pots, I'll be honest, 50, 60 centimetres for some of my trees and fruit bushes. And the reason that I've been doing this is because I kind of want them all to look the same. Last year we had our driveway done and it looks absolutely fantastic, I have to say. But before we had our driveway done, out the front there on our driveway was where we grew a lot of our potted plants. And because it was a bit of a mix mash of different pots, different colours, different styles, it just didn't look very appealing. So what I've decided to do, quite simply, is just try and get them all matching. So rather than going out and spending a fortune in pots in one go, I just go and spend £20 to £30 once a month and buy a really good classy pot. Now luckily they are all of the same colour and style. They match with the sort of look of my front driveway, and gradually we're just moving plant from pot to pot. But what I've realised, and I hinted at this a few weeks ago, what I've realised is that over the winter particularly, I think a combination of it being dry last year and some really cold spells during the winter, a lot of our fruit bushes and trees didn't make it. I've been holding off because I just wanted to see if there was any chance that they were going to come back. Well, they haven't. They are completely dead. We've got a few still, but probably 75% of my potted plants have died. So I've had to go and compost all those, which is a bit of a shame, bit of money wasted, but at the same time, it just goes to show that we have to look after our potted plants a little bit better. We have to really make a point of making sure when it's dry, they are watered. When it's cold, they have a bit of protection. And that's got to be the learning lesson that I've learned. However, the plants that I do have are going gradually out the front in these coloured pots that do make them look better. And I think when we add a mulch, and we're adding a mulch on the top of the pots as well, and I'm sticking with stone mulches. Now this isn't my usual type of mulch, I'll be honest, because I don't really see the benefit of stone other than suppressing weeds and reducing water. And that's one of the main advantages of what a mulch does, of course. But the other side of this is that they are also decorative. And out the front, particularly, I want it to look amazing. I want it to look decorative. So we've had to go for a decorative mulch compared to some of our other mulches, such as compost we would use. Now, before I laid the decorative mulch down, I did, of course, lay a layer of compost just to add a bit of nutrients into it and some feed as well, some slow release plant feed at the same time. So that means underneath the stone topping, there is still a layer of compost that has mulched the compost that is already in the pots and feeding the plants as they need it. Once a year we're going to have to remove these stones and layer another layer of compost and plant feed and then place the stones back. It's a bit of work, but I think it is worth it. Now, in addition to that, we have continued to sow a lot more seeds. Cucumbers, as I mentioned down on the allotment, have been sown, but also nasturtiums, sunflowers, just because there is still time to sow plenty of these. We've also sown carrots and beetroot and spring onions. You know, all these plants that we still have plenty of time to sow, we are sowing at the moment and trying to make the most of them while we can. Garden looks great, I have to say. The kitchen garden does look great. It's very full of lots of plants that thankfully haven't really been affected by the cold snap that we had this week. A couple of my sweet potato plants do look a little black, but I think they're able to cope with what they've got. So we've been quite lucky here at home compared to the allotment. And that is because my kitchen garden here is just that little bit more sheltered. We've got a fence on all three sides with the house on the fourth, which means the winds lift up, they keep the ground a little bit warmer. It's very much like a walled garden is how I like to think of it. That protection has made all the difference. And it just goes to show that the microclimates happen in small gardens as well. Now, one of the big things happening this weekend is I am collecting my bees. I'm starting beekeeping. This is something I've been talking about a lot this year. Well, it's happening. And in preparation for that, I only think it's right that we get some advice from Mark in Buzz into Beekeeping. So I'm going to give him a call. In the meantime, let's find out what's going on in the kitchen this week.
Chopping all the veggies, sizzle in the air. Chef Scott with the magic, smells are everywhere. Water starts to boil, onions hit the pan. Recipe of the week, let the feast begin. Cooking with Chef Scott, flavors come alive. Tune in every week for a tasty bite.
Now this week's recipe is a creamy spring onion and potato soup. Spring onions are a really reliable crop. We're harvesting them at the moment from our veggie pods. They're absolutely delicious. They bring this lovely mild flavour that just works so well in soups. Now if you planted some new potatoes early, especially if you have a greenhouse, there's a good chance you could be harvesting new potatoes now. And these two paired together are absolutely delicious. Now to cook this, what I did is I heated some butter, melted some butter in a pan and just add in a chopped onion and sautéed that onion until it was nice and soft. At which point I then added in some garlic and some sliced spring onions, cooked for another 2 to 3 minutes before adding in diced potatoes and some vegetable stock. I then brought everything up to a simmer and cooked that for 20 minutes until the potatoes were tender. Then I blended all the ingredients together to make a soup. I like a smooth soup. I've said before, I like it smooth, so I blend it until it was smooth. Added in a bit of cream and then served with some chopped spring onions as a bit of a garnish. Absolutely delicious, really easy to make and well worth making if you have any of these. Well, we've been having a monthly check-in with Mark from Buzz into Beekeeping, and today he's joining us on the podcast with an extra special side of it because he is actually at his apiary in Essex. Mark, welcome back. Hope you are well.
Hi, Richard. Yep, all well. Hope you can hear me okay. Obviously, outside today at the apiary, we've got 14 colonies of bees here at the moment. Most of them are doing pretty well, and they're keeping us very busy.
Awesome. So let's set the scene for the listener at home. Whereabouts are you?
So we're near Hanningfield Reservoir, if anyone knows that, sort of slap bang in the middle of Essex. So we're we've got a little corner of a field that a farmer's very kindly let us use. So we've got some young fruit trees in amongst all the hives, and we've got 2 rows of 7 hives here, all sorts of different heights, different colours, different states. Some of the hives that we've got here, we've sort of inherited from a beekeeper who sadly passed away, and the hives themselves are not in great state. So we've got a real mixture, hodgepodge of hives at the moment, but we're working our way through sort of rehoming those bees into new boxes which are sound and don't have loads of woodpecker holes all over them. So it's a kind of lovely sort of mix of colours and different hives, and lots of bees floating about.
Fantastic. So you usually fill us in with what's going on in the hive at this time of year. So what's going on in the hive?
Okay, so this is kind of peak beekeeping season or keep bee season really for the bees. What's going on in the hive is the queen is still laying at full tilt, so they're still trying to increase the number of bees as quickly as possible. Lots and lots of brood, sort of bees hatching out all the time. Obviously, there's a lot more bees in the hive, so we're probably looking at sort of 20, 30, possibly 40,000 bees in some of these hives now, and that's up from sort of 4,000 or 5,000 in the wintertime. And so lots of bees, and they're all busy, so they're out there collecting pollen, collecting nectar, bringing that back to the hive. They'll collect water too. They also collect things like tree sap that they use to create something called propolis, which they use as kind of a building material in the hive to sort of glue things together and fill holes and that sort of thing. So there's lots of stuff coming into the hives. So the colonies are getting pretty strong now, and we're in peak swarming season too. So that adds another dimension to everything. And bees swarm. It's their natural way of increasing the number of colonies, around. And what happens is when the colony gets strong enough and there's enough bees and enough forage around, they will start to raise new queens in the hive. And just before those new queens are ready to hatch out, the original queen and half the bees will fly off in a swarm. And lots of your listeners might have been lucky enough to sort of experience a swarm flying over. It's quite an incredible thing. Sky goes dark. The sound is incredible too.
Yeah.
But that's a big cloud of bees heading off to look for a new home. And what they've left behind is half the bees and loads of bees, sort of eggs and capped brood, and lots of bees that are soon to hatch out. And alongside them will be a bunch of new queens, and those queens will fight out amongst themselves until there's one left, and then that queen will go off and mate and then come back and continue the egg laying process for that hive. So in theory, then you now have two colonies, and there's less chance of a colony, the bees being wiped out, if you like, if there's more colonies about. So swarming season's in full swing at the moment. Any kind of warm day we get now is a potential swarm day. Just at the moment, it's obviously a little bit cooler this week. It's been sort of 13, 14 here in Essex. But sort of this time next week, we're looking at mid to high 20s. So it could be quite an interesting week next week.
So we could be expecting lots of swarms next week, or is it a case that managing the hive to stop the swarming is going to be
ideally, as beekeepers, we don't want them to swarm. There's lots of different things that we do as beekeepers to sort of work with the bees and mitigate the swarming or the risk of swarming. So there's a few things you can do. One of the things you can do is if you see that the bees are prepping to swarm, you see these swarm cells, which are special cells that the bees will create on the side of the comb. They look a bit like a peanut shell. And that's where they'll raise new queens. So when the bees start to create these, and there's larvae in there that will potentially become new queens, then you can do things. You can split the colony in half and move some of the bees out, and then it kind of tricks the bees into thinking that the swarm has happened, and then you don't then end up losing half your bees, and you actually end up with then two colonies, albeit both smaller colonies, but you then have two. So that's one of the ways you can sort of mitigate swarming. There's a few different ways, little strategies that beekeepers have to keep on top of swarming, and especially if you're aiming to produce honey, in the season, then you don't want your bees to swarm because you'll lose half the honey as well.
Okay, so the bigger the colony, the more chance you have of getting honey out of the hive.
Definitely. So you had a good strong colony, lots of bees, a good strong queen who's laying well, and also obviously if you have sort of the forage about, so wherever your bees are in the local area, well, actually not that local because they'll fly 3 miles in any direction. So generally in your general area, if there's maybe a field of oilseed rape or beans, or local farmers, or even just the gardens around your garden, if there's obviously your neighbors and everyone's flowers looking good this time of year, all that will do really well and help the bees producing loads of honey. Brilliant.
Now the big news is I am literally about to start my beekeeping journey. Very exciting. Yeah. Literally tomorrow I get my bees. So I have to admit, even though I've done lots of research and training and what have you, I am slightly nervous that when I pop the bees into the hive, I'm going to leave them for a few days and they're all going to fly away. Am I being over worried?
Yeah, yes. In a nutshell, yeah, they'll be fine. Your bees, you're probably, are you getting a colony of bees then?
Yeah.
You can. Okay, yeah. So at the moment, those bees have been living in a relatively small hive, and it's probably quite full of bees at the moment. And the queen's, she might be sort of looking for more space to lay eggs. So as soon as you put your hive, the frames, you take them from the nuke. I think the best thing to do is put the nuke in the position or on top of the hive where your hive is now for a bit. Let them sort of chill out and recover from the journey, and then when you're ready, putting those frames into your brood box of your hive, the bees will be quite happy because they'll have quite a lot more space. They'll obviously the flying bees will be sort of working out where they are, so they'll come out of the hive and do the orientation flights and kind of like do circles, big loops around the hive to work out where they are, because they'll realize they're not where they were. And they'll have lots of things to do in terms of settling into the new hive. So then they're not interested in flying off to go and try and find a new home at all. And also obviously the frames that they've been living on, you'll put those frames into the new hive, so they'll kind of feel at home straight away anyway. So yeah, you've got nothing to worry about. The bees won't go anywhere. Give them some time, and over the next few weeks, what you should hopefully see is you'll see the bees sort of expanding. The number of bees will increase. They'll start to draw comb, so make comb on the foundation on the other frames in your colony, and you'll see hopefully quite rapid growth.
So that is the sound of the bees flying around the hive. It is amazing.
Yeah. We've got a brood box here, pretty full of bees, and you can see it's quite a ropey old box, so we're looking to actually move these bees into a new box. But they seem quite happy.
Oh, don't they just? Well, how great was that? Hearing the bees fly around Mark at the same time as talking to us on the phone. Now, as already suggested, I have been lucky enough that I have now started beekeeping. This has been a journey that I've wanted to do for a while. I've been talking about it a lot this year. One of the biggest problems was actually finding somewhere to site the hive. I said my home garden was not good enough. My allotment, there was a lot of rules which I think are very fair, but made it impossible to have bees on the allotment. Well, a friend of mine came forward and has allowed me to use his field. And that's what we're doing. We placed our hive there in the corner of a field, out in the middle of nowhere, so it's not going to disturb anyone. And we can add more hives should we need to as well. Now, the story is that on Saturday, I collected my bees. I found a local supplier that was selling some bees. I didn't like the idea of it coming through the mail, and I thought if I can find them locally, all the better. Ideally, we would catch a swarm if we were lucky enough, but that didn't happen. So we had to buy them, and they were not cheap. They were over £200 for a nuke of bees. But I went and bought these from this place near me, and then I carried them for the 45 minutes it took to get to the field where I site my hive. Now, this was absolutely weird but fine at the same time. I had these in my car, and none of them escaped. None of them were too bothered. They were very, very calm bees. We put them into location. I then opened up the container that they came in and just let the bees fly around and get orientated for a couple of hours. At which point I then opened up the box completely that they came in and took all the frames out and popped them into my hive. And this was a point. I did get stung a couple of times doing this. I was rushing a little bit because, well, the adrenaline was going. There was bees flying all around me. I didn't know what to really expect. But the point is, we got them into the hive. We I saw them rather, by the entrance fanning, which was a sign that the queen was inside. I discovered it were basically trying to spread the pheromones, and that was encouraging the bees that didn't quite make it inside the hive to go in as well. Within another couple of hours, the bees seemed to have settled in, so I was quite happy to leave there. It was a long day, sat there doing not very much, but my bees are on location and I can now call myself a beekeeper, beginner beekeeper. I'm looking forward to sharing this journey with you, and I thought it's quite important to share with you why I'm doing this, because it's all about growing food. We're all about growing food here. I really want to encourage anybody to grow food in whatever space you had available. And I did say I didn't have space for keeping bees. Well, it's perfectly feasible for a farmer to loan you use of their field, should they want to as well. So there are options, and that is the point that I want to get across here. There are options. Well, this brings us up to the end of this week's podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have enjoyed it. Certainly been an interesting one nonetheless, with everything going on. If you have enjoyed it, then please rate and review on your podcast provider. We have had a couple of rate and reviews come in over on Spotify. A Robert Stephen Morley says, I have been following you on YouTube for years. I can't believe I've only just found your podcast. Keep up the good work and amazing listening while up the allotment. Thank you very much for that, Robert. Much appreciated. And Lynn has also said, hi Richard, I do think May can be really demanding month for veg growing. I can get everything planted out by the end of the month and have a weekend booked at the beginning of June to look forward to. Also managed to somehow plant a tomato, pepper and cucumber in my straw bale. I've waited 10 days after conditioning and the straw is softer. Fingers crossed, Lynn. It sounds like you are on the way there, Lynn. Well, if you've enjoyed this podcast, you want to help support the work that we do, then please also consider becoming a member of the Veg Grower Podcast Supporters Club. It is how we keep this podcast running. Details on that on our website, theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk, which is of course our website. And while you are on our website, you can also leave a comment or leave a voicemail. We do love getting our voicemails. Alternatively, you can email me, richard@theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk, or finally, you can find me on social media. Please do give us a like and a follow. Well, that is it for this week. We will be back again next time. So until then, please take care.